Hi everybody and welcome to today's virtual field trip. Just a few reminders before we begin. These trips are live and we could experience some technical issues. If that is the case, please be patient as we resolve them. And as always, we welcome and encourage your questions. So Palm Beach County students, please ask your questions in your Google Meet. And everybody else, you are welcome to use Poll Everywhere. We hope that you are ready to learn something new and have some fun. Benji, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Benji Stute with Palm Beach County's Environmental Resources Management. I am so excited for today. This is our last field trip of this school year, but we are ending it in the place that I love the most, and that is the swamp. All right. So you might be wondering, why are we not in the swamp? And I wanted to start here on the canal bank. We're on the banks of the C18 canal in the Loxahatchee Slough Natural Area. This is our largest natural area here in the Palm Beaches. Almost 12,000 acres of land has been restored and protected here. And today we're going to be exploring the Everglades here in the Palm Beaches. But I wanted to show you guys this canal system that runs directly through the natural area because this highlights what Florida is now. And what that is an engineered system. It is a system that we have manipulated. And the fact of the matter is the vast majority of you guys watching, we couldn't live here except for these canals. These canals, this whole system was dug about 100 years ago after a devastating hurricane that overtopped the banks of Lake Okeechobee. And the whole purpose was to drain the swamp and make it more productive because back then we thought that wetlands and swamps were wastelands. And so the Army Corps of Engineers did an amazing job of that by digging this canal system, interconnected and draining the land. But over the decades, what we realized is, oh man, swamps and wetlands are really important for us. This is where our drinking water comes from. Whether we get it from the surface, like everybody living in West Palm Beach, through Grassy Waters Preserve, they get their water from Everglades systems that we're gonna see and be walking through today, or whether you get it out of the surficial aquifer. That aquifer is recharged by all of this water on the land, infiltrating down through the caprock. So we are in an engineered system, but that doesn't mean that we can't restore it. And Loxahatchee Slough Natural Area is a perfect example of that restoration. The Everglades habitats that we're going to explore today looked nothing like this 20 years ago. And it was our ability to work with water managers to implement control structures and protocols to raise water back up and restore these lands. And we're about to see all of the fruits of that labor and why these places are so special and important. So let's go get in the swamp. Now you can see that canal is right there. This runs through the natural area. Those engineers, they're no dummies. They put that canal in the deepest part of Loxahatchee Slough. We're going to learn what a slough is in a little bit, but it's only we just go down this canal bank and we're going to step right into the Everglades. And I brought some friends with me that you're going to meet. So let's go get in the water. Okay, Alicia, watch out for this barbed wire here.
I see it.
Okay. And watch your step. So we just went down from dry land to ankle deep, and now we're up to our knees in the swamp. Okay. All right. So I want to introduce part of the crew today. I am so stoked because we have Miss Gardner with us today. So Miss Gardner is a science teacher at Bach Middle School. So Miss Gardner, you want to say hi to your students?
Yes. Hey, Box Stars. I'm so excited to join ERM and all of you on this adventure. Let's check out Loxahatchee Slough.
All right. So Miss Gardner knows all about what goes on in the swamp, but she doesn't frequently come out here and swamp trump. So this is such an interesting experience to have you out here, Miss Gardner. The other thing that I want to point out for you students is Miss Gardner is definitely, she's repping her Bach Middle School shirt here, but she's got this hat on. I don't like that one.
We love this hat.
Now, We are here in the swamp, in the Everglades. I've got my Trailblazer shirt on that has the gator right there. And I got to tell you guys, I don't know if any of you are sports fans, but it is great to be a Florida Gator, especially this week. All right.
Let's go this way.
Okay. Okay.
Let's go this way.
One last thing before we get to our first trap. We've set some traps out here because it's easy to look at the Everglades and look out and not see anything above the water and think that this is a wasteland. There's nothing here. But this place is so alive, and it's alive under the water. And so we've set some minnow traps to try to catch some critters that live here in the swamp. Oh, and Miss Gardner's got one, or the remnants of one right now. So Miss Gardner, what do you have there?
This is a dragonfly exoskeleton. So dragonflies go through a life cycle. They don't stay the same. So it shed its outer skeleton, and now it is in its adult stage.
Yeah, so you guys think of like a butterfly, right? It'll start out as a caterpillar. So dragonflies will start out living in the swamp, in the water. They're like the wolves of the swamp. They're like these super predators underwater, just like dragonflies are when they're out of the water. And ultimately, these guys form wings underneath that exoskeleton, and then they come up out of the water on one of these pieces of vegetation, and they break free from that exoskeleton, and then they're free to fly. All right. So the other person, Anne, come on over here, because you don't usually see Anne until you get your amazing photos after these field trips. But Ann Matthews is here, so she's part of our crew. Ann. We also have Samantha Core as well, but Ann is responsible for so much of our photos and our social media content, and it is Ann's birthday tomorrow, and so we have some birthday queen glasses. I don't know if she's going to be able to take pictures.
Yeah, that might be a little rough, man. That might be a little rough. Yeah.
In honor of Ann's birthday tomorrow, and I know Ann's mom is watching.
Oh,
say hi, Mom.
Happy birthday, Ann. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. I'm taking this one for Kylie because Kylie was supposed to be.
That's right. That's right. You guys know Kylie from last month.
Yep.
Kylie is supposed to be here. It's her birthday today. Happy birthday, Kylie.
Happy birthday, Kylie.
Happy birthday, Kylie.
She is under the weather. So it's us in the
Let me just see that, Ann, that look. Wow, you got it, girl.
All right, guys. So let's go check our first trap. See what we got here under the water. And I think
Lots of happy birthday wishes for Kylie and Ann from the crowd.
oh, thank you guys.
You get a little sense of what we're walking through here.
So this is very thick. It's like kind of mucky. The water's pretty clear though, but it's not easy to walk through.
All right. So, Miss Gardner, can you hold that?
First, let me get a pretty.
So, guys, to give you a sense of how this is going to work today, we're going to be moving from trap to trap. It's going to take us a long time to do that. So bank those questions, because as we're moving slowly through this swamp, that's when I want you guys to ask those questions. But here's... All right, guys. I am so excited because in our first trap, we have some of my favorite animals of the swamp. These are animals that barely anyone in Florida knows even exist. Ooh, man.
Whoa.
All right. And so what we have here is one of Florida's 2 species of giant salamanders. We've got 2 of them. And these are the 2-toed.
Oh, look, there's some tadpole and shrimp and fish in there too.
Yes. So these are the 2-toed amphiumas. Let's see what else. We're going to get some of our bait in there too, but all right. Thank you, Samantha.
Can you hold that up a little?
Okay.
Yep.
So let's talk about what we got in here. So you see these eel-like creatures. These are 2-toed amphiumas. There are giant salamanders. They can get up to 4 feet long. And our friends at South Florida Water Management District have done studies. And in healthy Everglades ecosystems and stormwater treatment areas, there's about one of these guys every square meter, which means about every step we take, one of these salamanders is running out of our way. And if you guys can see this tiny little, we call them vestigial legs, and there's two toes that are sticking out right behind its head. Now, these guys have really small eyes. They have very poor eyesight, and that's because they live in the muck and in the flocculent that is below the surface of the water, and that's where they hunt. And they hunt using these sensory pits that are on the front of their snout. So those sensory pits can help them detect movement. Oh, it looks like this one's also got a parasite right on his right on the back of his front leg. So these guys have two toes on its front legs and then two toes on its back legs, and those legs are pretty much useless. They've almost evolved to be completely not there.
Now, Benji, these are definitely not snakes. What are these related to?
Right. So these are amphibians. These are amphibians. So they're related to things like frogs. And very interestingly, we also have in here,
Ooh.
Miss Gardner, you want to hold this?
The cute?
No, the animals. All right. So what do we have here?
Ooh, we have a tadpole.
Yes. Yes.
We have a tadpole.
So this is a tadpole. You can see it's, you just lay your hands flat.
Still has legs.
Right. So it's
And a
growing those
tail.
legs. So this tail is going to shrink while those legs grow. And this tadpole is going to turn into a frog.
They bring you over.
So now, Brittany, what's amazing about having these amphibians here in the swamp is these animals are telling us something about this habitat in this water just by their presence and being here. Just come right over here into the sun. There we go. We want to get that beautiful color. So amphibians, Brittany, some amphibians like frogs, they will breathe air through their nose. Other amphibians like the two-toed amphiuma, and there's another giant salamander we have here in Florida called the greater siren. The greater siren actually has external gills. So these giant salamanders are going to stay in the water their whole lives. But in addition to that respiratory organ that amphibians have, they can also catch oxygen through their skin.
So my students and I were doing research on amphibians, and we learned that at first they have lungs. Well, at first they have gills, and then they develop lungs. So at this stage, do they have both?
So this one is transitioning, and so we can let him go here. So this frog, and now all amphibians are not the same. You know, like most things in nature. There he goes.
Swam away.
All amphibians are not the same. And so not every amphibian is going to go through that life stage of starting with gills and transitioning to lungs like frogs. So they're a little different, but what allows them to breathe through the water through their skin is all amphibians have, their skin is packed with these very, very tiny tens of thousands of blood vessels. And so because their skin is so transmissive, permeable, they're able to absorb oxygen that's in the water straight through their skin and into that blood. But if they can absorb oxygen through their skin, what else can they absorb?
Right. Pollution, toxins.
Right, absolutely. And so if there are any kind of toxins in this environment, the first animal that's going to disappear is going to be our amphibians, our frogs, our giant salamanders, like the two-toed amphiumas here. Now the two-toed amphiuma.
I have a couple questions. I don't know when would be the best time to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the questions that we have is the two-toed amphiuma going to feel like a snake, or is it going to be slimy? And then the second question is, what do the two-toed amphiumas and the tadpoles eat?
All right, so that's a great question. First question, they are super slimy. Like these things, I can't even hold them. Like I can't even, even if I tried to squeeze them, I couldn't hold them. Like they just slip right out of my hand. They're incredibly, incredibly slimy. So, frogs are maybe a little slimy. These two-toed amphiumas are wildly, wildly slimy. And that is for a good reason. And it is because these two-toed amphiumas have a superpower. So when you live in a swamp, sometimes you go through drought. And when you have drought, you have no rain. Sometimes your swamp is going to dry up. Well, if these animals are exposed when their swamp dries up, then they would desiccate and they would die. And so their superpower is they use that slime. And when their swamp runs out of water, they burrow themselves down into the mud, down into the muck, and they create their own little slime cocoon. And they can go dormant. It's a process called estivation. So this is like hibernation on steroids. They can estivate for up to 5 years waiting for the water to return. So imagine just, you're pretty tired. You're not feeling school the next day. Imagine if you could create your own slime cocoon and then just chill out for 5 years.
That's a cool adaptation.
All right. So that is the question. Are they slimy? The other question is, what do they eat? Okay. So different species are going to eat different things, right? So frogs, you've got that kind of image in your mind of a frog, like a tree frog, that's gonna be grabbing different things, insects, different things like that. These guys, they hunt in that flocculent with sensory pits on their face. So they're actually going to be hunting things like frogs, like crayfish, like dragonfly nymphs, like beetles, some of these smaller fish, if they can get their mouths onto those. And even though these are amphibians, they do actually have some pretty nasty teeth. So I've heard that they can give you a little bit of a bite. I've never been bitten by one. I try to stay away from the business end of these things. Just a couple other things to note in here. We've got some really cool native fish. So this right here, this beautiful fish is a warmouth. This is part of the brim and bass family. You see those beautiful speckles on him. And then what else is in my hand there? But a shrimp. Who knew we had shrimp in the swamp, right? So shrimp are really cool, much like crayfish. Oh, look at that. And this shrimp is a female and she's got eggs. So so this little packet right here is eggs that she has and she's getting ready to release. So we want to put her back in the water so she can keep reproducing. The really cool thing about shrimp, crayfish are very similar, is when we're talking about food chains and food webs, those guys are kind of the base of the food web. They are decomposers, right?
Yeah.
So these guys are taking detritus, little bits of organic matter in the water, and they're eating those, and then they're excreting them out, as nutrients and helping the next generation of plants grow. So they're actually really helping with that process. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. Someone came through and asked us, how many eggs does it hold? What you were just referring to.
Oh gosh, I could not tell you on grass shrimp. That would be a great thing for you guys to research. I would imagine several hundred.
Yes.
Those eggs are tiny, and that's a tiny creature, but those eggs are very, very tiny. So I would guess several hundred.
Yeah. And they're not taking care of their young. So typically animals like that are releasing a lot of eggs to ensure reproductive success for the next generation.
That's right. Now, what's cool about these grass shrimp is they're also really, really clear. They're translucent. So if we can get this in the sun, and I don't know if you can see that, but there's a dark spot there. Now, that's not eggs.
What is that?
But that's right behind the eyes, and that's kind of its brain and then organ structure. Whoop, there he goes. All right, so we got a lot of traps to get to and a lot of fun stuff. So we've got some mosquito fish in here too. So we've got a lot of really good diversity in here. Let's say goodbye to these giant salamanders here. I'm going to try to do this really slow, and maybe we can kind of get one in the hand here. Oh, look at him. He's kind of checking out my hands.
Oh my goodness. It's crawling a little bit. The little feet. Mm-hmm.
No shot at holding these guys. There goes some mosquito fish. And this other one's
Might
being
try to get a
very
little
shy.
feel on the way out.
Yeah.
Ooh. Has very moist skin, very smooth. Try to pick them up. I don't think it'll let me. Let's see. It's not happening.
There he goes.
Very slithery.
All right. Okay. So if we got any questions, now when we're moving would be a great time for any more. Yep. And Alicia, you can just turn right around. You need to follow us.
Ooh, okey doke.
Oh.
I love filming the struggle.
Now, you guys are probably wondering about alligators, and yes, they are here. Yes, they are huge, and yes, we're going to talk about them later on. Woo. All right, we're already together. So, I think we can skip up. So, what I'd love to do, Sam, do you think we could I ask you to go grab those two traps?
Yep. And
While we head over here,
okay, you want me to bring them?
just so we keep on time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Bring them too. Okay, we'll do.
All right. All right, so I want to bring you guys over here kind of in front of us so that you can see, and Miss Gardner, if you can just come over by me on this side. So what I want to show you guys here is one of these myths of the swamp. And that is that swamps are muddy and mucky. But I mean, look at how crystal clear this water is. It is beautiful, beautiful. And you would think that this right here is the bottom, but it's not. This is called the flocculent layer. So then my hand goes down. Look at all those bubbles coming up. That's really the bottom. That's how deep it is. So this flocculent layer is all of this. There's vegetation in here. There's also dead vegetative matter, dead leaf material. And that makes up this really spongy layer at the bottom of the swamp. And then there's also all of these plants in here. So we've got some native plants here. This is a plant called Cara. It's also known as musk grass. And so this lives under the water, and it's actually, Miss Gardner, this is not a plant. This is what we call a macroalgae.
That's in the Protus kingdom.
So okay, so
That.
Protus kingdom. So what's
Yeah.
what's kind of that difference between like plants and how they reproduce and then algae?
Okay.
So the plants are going to produce some of these beautiful things that we like to put in vases, right? So our plants are going to be either flowering plants or they're going to be conifers, right? That produce cones. This is an algae, and they're going to produce these little sporangia on the ends of these little tufts. And each one of these bracts is made up of a single cell, and it's stacked on top of each other. And it's called muskgrass because, if you crush it up, smell it.
Let's smell this
they
one.
say that it's got like a garlicky smell. I wish you guys had smell-o-vision.
Yeah, this one smells very herbal, like something you would almost cook with.
Yeah.
Like if you could dry it out and chop it up.
So a little,
It's
little
definitely
garlicky, right?
fragrant. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely fragrant.
Yeah.
Now, Benji, I'm seeing a lot of this. What did you call it?
So, you know, what we have here is some of this is attached to vegetation, and we've broken some of it loose, but a lot of this, it's initially attached to this chara, and this is called periphyton. So periphyton is this complex of algae and bacteria and protozoas and dead plant materials. And it's all of this complex that really tells us that the water quality is good here, that it's low nutrient. This is kind of typical of the Everglades. And then another plant that we have here, this is a flowering plant. There's no flowers on it right now, but this is a carnivorous plant called bladderwort. And so if you guys can see those little bulbs, you know, this thing just falls flat when I pick it up out of the water. But when it's submerged where it's supposed to be, look at that, how beautiful it is, symmetrical. Here's a little flower stalk. That flower is coming up. Each one of those little bulbs is a carnivorous trap. And the way that they work is, imagine that those little bulbs that you're seeing there, imagine it's like a squeaky ball for a dog, okay? And the squeaky balls, they have that little hole in that big ball where the air goes in and out. And that's the same thing that these little bulbs have. They have a little exit, and it's really hard to see, but right now this one is primed, it's flat. It's like if you squeeze that squeaky ball and you made it flat. And then what happens when you release your squeeze on that little squeaky ball, it inflates. And that's the same thing with this trap. It's like a squeaky ball, and it has a little trigger like a Venus flytrap. And as soon as some tiny little organism goes in there and touches that trigger, it starts to inflate, and it pulls the creature into that little sac where it has digestive enzymes and it gets its
Very cool.
nutrients.
Now I'm noticing all these like little lily pads.
Yeah.
And they're attached. They're not floating around. They're attached to the bottom.
Right.
So what role? I know typically we think about frogs when we see lily pads. What other role does this play in the ecosystem?
Yeah. So, I mean, these lily pads, these are rooted plants. These are fragrant water lilies. It's one of our native species. They're beautiful flowers. We'll see one as we're walking. But these fragrant water lilies are doing multiple functions. So one thing they're doing, we associate them with frogs because maybe a frog is like sitting up on a lily pad, taking a rest or whatever. They provide cover. They provide homes for all of the animals that live in the swamp.
I think I see little fish under.
Yes, there's fish underneath. They provide shade because in the summertime especially, the swamp can get really hot. It gets really hot here in Florida. And so fish will concentrate right underneath there. One just shot out right there to catch some shade, but it's also they're hiding from predators. The other thing that these plants do, like all of the plants in this system, is they're removing nutrients from the water. They're removing phosphorus and nitrogen. And that is why the water quality here in Loxahatchee Slough is so good because this doesn't receive a lot of water from homes that put a lot of fertilizer on the ground or septic tanks that leak. And so really the water quality here is fantastic, and these plants are all removing those nutrients.
So I imagine it's also filtering our water.
It's filtering
Yes,
our
for
water,
drinking.
100%, yes.
Yes.
Now, another interesting thing you guys might see is when we take a step, Alicia, let's see if you guys can see this. I want to see if you can see bubbles coming up. Miss McGill, can you see that? Those bubbles coming up?
Yes, we can.
All right, so those bubbles, a lot of people call it swamp gas, and that's actually what it is. And so what those bubbles are is pretty much pure methane. Now, you guys may have heard of methane as a greenhouse gas. It's like carbon dioxide on steroids. One of the reasons swamps are so important to us is they help combat climate change. These are carbon sinks, okay? So because especially a slough like this, and we talked about a slough, right? And that's a weird word.
Yes.
But have you heard of the river of grass?
Yes, I have.
Like when we talk about the Everglades.
Everglades.
Yes. Yes. And that's what a slough is. A slough is essentially a river. The water here is moving.
Moving slow.
So slow. Like like slower than you guys walk to class
That's
in
where the
between
word
classes.
came from. Slow and slew.
Slew?
I think that's where it came from.
Sure.
Yes.
So this water is moving, like if you took a molecule of this water, it would take it like over a week to go a mile. So incredibly slow. But that's what a slough is it is a river that is just really shallow and really, really wide. So all of this water eventually goes into the wild and scenic Loxahatchee River, which is channelized, and it's only,
Really cool.
the river and its floodplain is a few 100 feet wide. Here, the slough is like 2 miles wide. And so that is this river of grass. Now, back to this gas we see, this swamp gas that's coming up. That is methane. And sloughs are going to be long hydroperiod wetlands. They're almost always wet. And so as bacteria are breaking down the detritus, this plant material that's down in this flocculent layer,
Decomposers, right? Recycling
decomposers,
nutrients.
absolutely. These bacteria are decomposing all of this dead plant material, this detritus. And what happens when you don't have oxygen that is plentiful and the bacteria are doing their job, they produce methane. But that methane gets trapped down in the swamp. So we get plants that are taking carbon dioxide out of the air. They're dropping their leaves in the swamp. Those leaves, gotcha, thank you. Those leaves are not decomposing super fast because there's not much oxygen. And so these bacteria are decomposing them very slow, producing methane. All of that is trapped under the water, and that's why we call these swamp systems carbon sinks. So these are super important to combat climate change.
I'm glad we have these natural areas, honestly. 'Cause what else? How else could we have all this water held and nutrients recycled in our area if we didn't have all these natural areas?
Absolutely, absolutely. And
So I have a question. So you're telling me this water right here that you're standing in is flowing?
it is flowing.
Oh.
It is flowing from behind us where you see towards the camera right now. That's the direction of flow. All right, so guys,
Ben,
what I
there's a question about like bottled spring water. How does that come to play? Because you're talking about drinking water, so how does that come to play?
right. So, good gosh, if you want to do something good for wild Florida and for our environment, stop buying spring water. Okay, spring water is harvested by companies straight out of spring heads, and here in Florida, we've got kind of an epidemic going on where our springs are unhealthy, and one of the reasons they're on is twofold. First, it's nutrients, just like is a problem in the Indian River Lagoon, where seagrass is dying off and it's causing manatees to starve. I mean, it's terrible what nutrients do. So that's a problem in the springs. The other problem is these companies are literally sucking water straight from the spring head that feeds these vital ecosystems, putting it in bottles for us. So I would say, if you can do one thing for the environment, first of all, stop using plastic bottles. And second of all, just buy a good filter, good Brita filter, filter that tap water and put it in a reusable bottle.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yes.
Question
Yes.
about nutrients. That sounds like a good word, but what do you mean that it's harming the water? Too much?
Right. So did you guys learn about this at all?
So we're actually starting our ecosystems unit. We're learning about decomposers, and they play a role in recycling nutrients. So plants rely on nutrients to grow and other autotrophs that make energy using the sun or their surroundings. So nutrients can be good. I know sometimes we talk about too many nutrients like algae blooms, and that could be an indicator of an unhealthy ecosystem. But nutrients are not a bad thing.
Right. In the right levels, right? In the right levels. And here in Florida, it just so happens that we have a really nutrient poor environment. Our soils here are made up mostly of sand and limestone. So they're very calcareous, lots of calcium. But there is not a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen naturally in Florida. And so when we dump fertilizer on our lawns, we supercharge some of these plants. Like these plants are natural, they're native. Things like cattails and willows and even algae, they're native. But like you guys may have heard of like red tide blooms, on the Gulf Coast.
Yes.
And so that's another one. It's a naturally occurring process. But when we dump fertilizers into our water system, and then that nutrient-rich water goes out to the coast and hits that red tide, it explodes. It creates this supercharged system, and it overtakes everything.
Nutrient overload.
Yes.
Yes.
So everything in nature is in balance. I hope you guys have heard that. And everything affects everything else. We're going to learn about a little more of that. We're going to move again. So please, guys, ask questions. We want to hear
We're just going to be
from
walking.
you. These trips are for you.
Questions about, are there birds out there? Because right now we've seen stuff in the water and they haven't really seen anything flying over. So what kind of birds would be in that ecosystem?
Yeah. So let's go and see if we can see one of those right now. But while we go, do you think you can carry that without? All right. So Miss Gardner is going to go ahead of me. And I'm going to attempt to moonwalk through the swamp. And this may end badly.
Oh, let's see that. I don't think so.
So some of the birds, when we were out here before, you guys probably can't see it on this video feed, but Ann has photos. We have these swamp birds called limpkins that are out here. They're wading birds. They're brown with white speckles. They've got a really long bill. They feed on things like apple snails and mollusks. We also have red-winged blackbirds calling. I can hear them. We've had fish crows flying over top of us, grackles. And what we're going over to check out is kind of the symbol of restoration here in Loxahatchee Slough, because we have a nest of a really special bird. And Alicia, you want to? Here, I'll just selfie this. You got it?
I got it.
Okay. All right. So we're trying to make some speed here so we can get through this, because I'm going to let you guys in on a little magic of TV. We checked the other traps that we have out here. We got something really, really special at the end at our last trap. So
Benji, they want to know if there's a lot of invasive species.
invasive species, that is a great question. And the answer is yes. We have to combat invasive species every year. Our most expensive management cost is managing exotic vegetation. So here on Loxahatchee Slough, we manage exotic vegetation. We also manage wild hogs. They're very destructive to the habitat. But Alicia, I want to see if you can point the camera so that my finger is pointing at this nest that is up in this tree. So Miss Gardner's back there.
There you go. Do you guys see that?
And Miss Gardner is right back by it. That is a nest of an Everglades snail kite. This is...
Let's see if I can. I can.
I see something else back here that's pink.
Ah, okay. So the Everglades snail kite is kind of the symbol of restoration here in Loxahatchee Slough. And this is a bird that was down to a few hundred birds when it was listed as endangered. And that is because it eats only one thing, and that is apple snails. It has evolved with these huge, these long talons. Oh, somebody's calling right now. So that's a limpkin that was just calling.
There are definitely birds here, for those of you asking. We hear the calls periodically. This is a nest. This is evidence of birds here.
Right, and so this nest now, this is not active. If it was active, we would not be this close. And if it was active, we would have a mama snail kite screaming at us. So snail kites eat apple snails, and they were endangered because we drained the swamp. We drained all the Everglades. And so, Alicia's got her hands on more dragonfly nymphs. And so when we drained the Everglades, we drained all of the habitat of the apple snails, which is the only thing that these birds can eat. They have this really curved beak that helps them scoop that meat out. And so these birds with restoration will come back. They're like nomads. They don't have site fidelity, meaning they're not tied to a nesting site. They're going to go build their nest wherever the conditions are right, wherever there are snails at a depth.
Look at some of these. Aren't these their eggs? The pink apple snail eggs.
Yes, Miss Gardner. So that is a great find, and that's a great way to talk about invasive species.
Look, there's a little spider right there.
Yep, there's a little spider right there next to the eggs. So these are invasive island apple snail eggs. So we have both native apple snails and invasives here. And this is one of these stories.
But Benji, if they're invasive, does
Yes.
that mean that we should just be getting rid of these, or
So
how do we handle this?
we actually used to think that. We used to think that we should get rid of these, and we actually wrote that into our management plans. But this is the very rare instance where an invasive species helped to save a native endangered species. There was a huge drought. Snail kites, remember, I said they were endangered. Their population was coming back up. And they were up to about 2,000 to 3,000, 2,500, 3,000 birds in the state. And then we had massive droughts in 2008, 2009. And their population plummeted down to under 1,000 birds. So it was cut by more than half in just 2 years. And you know what those snail kites did? We were nervous because the exotic snails are much bigger than our native snails. And we thought, oh man, our birds aren't going to have the strength, especially the young ones, to dig that snail, open it up, open its trap door, and get that meat out. The snail kites started nesting in cattails on canal banks where the invasive apple snails were. And the invasive apple snail is what allowed the kites to survive those droughts that drained all of the wetlands that we had already drained and allowed their population to rebound. And now these birds are nesting in high quality habitat like Loxahatchee
So
Slough.
wait a minute, you mean an invasive species
Yes.
brought back our snail kite population?
Absolutely, it helped. And the other wild thing is, over only 15 years,
That's
biologists at University of Florida and ARCI have documented this. In only 15 years, the average beak size and body size, especially of young birds, has increased.
Awesome.
Okay, so now we don't call that evolution because it has happened too fast. We call that something really cool called phenotypic plasticity. And phenotypic plasticity is like a game cheat code that is buried in our genes. We all have them. And so what phenotypic plasticity is, these cheat codes, and when environmental conditions present themselves, all of a sudden, you know, human beings will get taller. Like, we have gotten way taller than the average height over the last 100 years. It's because we are eating a lot more nutritious food.
Right. I was just thinking that. As long as we're, treating our bodies well, our genes can express themselves as they were designed to do.
And that's what phenotypic plasticity is, and that's what we saw with our snail kites. So that's something to keep in mind with invasives. Ms. Gardner, it's a great time to ask, like, these snails, are they evil individually?
I don't think so. I don't think they're evil at all. They don't know they're invasive. They were released in our area, and our area provided a habitat for them to flourish. So
And who released them? Who brought them here?
people.
That's right.
People.
The world's undefeated champion
Yes.
of invasive species. So it's important not to demonize the invasive animals that are here, especially individually. And when we do control them, we've got to control them in the most ethical way possible. All right, so we're going to keep moving because we've got to, get to this last.
When we say we're moving fast, this is fast. When you're in a slough.
And here we have a couple questions.
Sure.
So in the apple snail egg casing, how many eggs would roughly be in there?
Okay, you guys are all over with the numbers quick.
We'll go back to count.
Native apple snails have much larger eggs, and there's about 60 to 80 in a cluster of native apple snail eggs. In the invasives, there can be several hundred, much smaller eggs, several hundred of them.
They also want to know what gives the invasive that pink color.
The what?
What gives them the pink color? The invasives.
Oh, I'm not sure. That's just, color of the invasive eggs.
It must
It's kind
be
of
an
like-
adaptation, though. It must be helpful somehow. We just have to.
Yeah, it's kind of like birds, Different birds have different colored eggs, different patterns on the eggs, depending on their species.
Benji, we have two more questions, and I don't know what order you want to answer them. They want to know what kind of trees are out there, and then the other question is, what are the indicators that the ecosystem is dying off? So you talked about healthy indicators, so what would be the reverse?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so trees out here. The trees that we see This is Florida, right? These are cypress trees. I love cypress trees. So these guys are in the same family as redwoods and sequoias. So historically, just go home and Google cypress logging historic photos, and you will see cypress trees with loggers standing on them that are 12 feet wide. I mean, these are massive trees. They can grow. The oldest one was just found in, I think, South Carolina, that beat the record. It's 2,600 years old, 2,600 years old. So these are cypress trees. I think we got 15 minutes left. Yeah, I think we got to go straight. Thank you, Sam. So that's the majority of the trees you see are cypress trees. They're evolved to live in the water. And then the other question, a lot of down logs in here. The other question was, what's an indicator of an unhealthy ecosystem? So right here, I hope that you guys have seen, we've got a very good diversity of native plants. We have duck potato here, we have button bush, we have these water lilies, we have spike rush, we have sawgrass, we have willow, and let's come over here to this willow, because this is really important, Alicia.
We didn't see
this question.
We didn't see the sawgrass. Here you go.
So our next trap here is right next to.
We have one more question. So students realize that Loxahatchee Slough is a very large natural area. We have some students who'd like to know, like, where exactly are you?
Where are we? Well, if you know roads in the county, so we're in the city of Palm Beach Gardens, and we are about a half a mile north of PGA Boulevard, which is up in the north end of the county. Now, to go from the south end of the natural area to the north end is probably about 6 or 7 miles, and this is only half of the historic slough, because the other half is Grassy Waters Preserve. That is also the Loxahatchee Slough, which feeds water historically to the river. Now, I want to go back because I want to answer with a specific example the question about indicators of unhealthy habitat. This is a Carolina willow. This is a tree that loves nutrients, okay? And so if we had poor water quality, if we had poor environmental conditions, this tree would take over this entire habitat. It would outcompete all the other natives because it loves nutrients. But it's being held in check because we don't have over-nutrified water here in Loxahatchee Slough. So that's one of the things that we can look at, and just by the fact that this is a willow and we are not surrounded by willows, we know that there's low nutrients in the water here.
So it sounds like biodiversity is definitely a good indicator of
It's
health.
You nailed it, Miss Gardner.
Yes.
Biodiversity, right?
I see a lot of visitors from birds. There's some in the background, you can't see that. But if we're seeing little animals, we're seeing diverse groups of organisms reproducing, that is definitely a good indicator.
All right, so I need to get some clear water for here.
Could you get a bunch because it's easier to see?
Okay. I will get a bunch.
And it's all clear, but when we're walking through, we're kind of stirring it up a little bit. So he's going to grab it from over there.
Okay. So, Elisa, I don't think we can carry this
Okay.
to our last one, just with the way things are going. But, all right. Oh, we got another slithery one. Well, I'm going to try. All right. So this is a guy you've met before, you all. This is a two-toed amphiuma. Another example of our giant salamander here. All right, Miss Gardner, can you come over?
Okay. Can I rest it down a little? Or no, let me hold it up so you guys can see.
I'm attached. So I need you to come. There we go. And I just want to put him in there, a little diving beetle.
Oh, look at that.
All right, so we can see him here in the
Another
sun.
species.
Yes, there's a predatory diving beetle in there. So we got another amphiuma. Now,
Let me.
Got it.
what I want to point out here, guys, is we didn't catch these salamanders in every trap. We actually, because we're moving so slow and there's so much to talk about, we had 3 other traps. 2 of them had fish in them, and 1 of them had nothing. Now, when we're collecting data as scientists, if we caught nothing, that's still really important data, right, Ms. Gardner?
Yes,
So-
it happens.
Absolutely, and that would be telling us something. The other thing that we can do is interpret. Okay, spatially, we are catching these giant salamanders on the edge of this wetland. We're catching them in areas that don't have the deeper water where the fish were, and we're catching them in areas that have a deep flocculent and muck layer. And that's not surprising, right? Because we talked about their life history and how they survive and how they hunt. And that is where they want to be, is in that flocculent layer. All right, so
I'm actually really interested in this diving beetle. I remember hearing about this and now I'm seeing it.
yeah,
It takes like a little air bubble down, like a little scuba tank
yeah,
when it
so
goes
can
under
do
the
that.
water.
So the predatory diving beetles do that. The fishing spiders also do that. They'll take a little bubble of air down in the water and they'll use that like a scuba tank as they go down and try to get insects and fish. And they have a little venomous mouth part that they'll use to subdue their prey. So yeah, really cool little beetles. You do not want to get one of those guys stuck in your shoe. All right, Alicia, I know time-wise, I think we're, oh, we got 10 minutes?
Okay.
All right, guys, if I fall, it's going to be worth it because I want you to see
I'll try to catch you.
this next animal side by side with it.
Whoa! I went down.
You good?
So that is one heavy cube now.
This is like super skilled.
You
right
can
here.
float it.
So many different plants. So I guess it's a good thing we came this week and not in the summertime because these water levels would be a lot higher in the summertime. Is that right, Lindsay?
Well,
So maybe show us with your
that is
fingers.
a wonderful question. And let's talk about that. I'm going to ask Sam. I'm huffing and puffing here, guys, because it is not easy walking through the swamp. So Ms. Gardner was just asking about water levels, and we're in the dry season. Now, hurricane season, which is the wet season, is about June through November. But generally, we might get a couple of rains in June, but we usually are still kind of dry. And this is when water levels are dropping. But that's super important. Let's talk about the connectivity. And is there any shot while we're grabbing that you can grab that trap for us? Thank you. You should be able to just lift it off of the knee. All right, so let's talk about connectivity of everything. Nature goes in patterns. You just make sure we don't tip him over. As the water drops, all of this life that we've been exploring in the swamp gets less and less real estate. It gets more and more concentrated. And when it gets more concentrated, that is when predators that eat fish and crayfish and amphiomas, they can have a better shot at hunting. And that is why it is in the dry season that our wading birds nest. Because during the year, our wading birds are trying their hardest just to survive, to catch enough food to feed themselves. There's no shot that they could support new life. But in the dry season, as water levels drop, that is when our wading birds, and in fact, right here in Loxahatchee Slough, right now, we have a couple of hundred nests of snowy egrets, tricolored herons, little blue herons, cattle egrets, and they're all raising chicks in the nest right now as we speak because water levels are dropping, and that gives these animals a better chance to catch more food and feed their young. So again, these natural rhythms are what nature responds to and allows us or allows those animals to reproduce.
Can you show us maybe what the high water table is on that?
Um,
Is there like
Sure.
the algae?
Yeah, so turn around, Alicia. Or actually, we
This
got
one's
a
easier.
good one right here.
Yeah.
So Alicia asked about water table. This is really important because when we are restoring lands, what we want to do is we want to listen to the land. The land is talking to us all the time. The question is, are we listening? And we forgot how to listen. But us biologists know that water levels are here right now, but they go up and down throughout the year. But we can tell because of biologic indicators on the plants what the hydrology is or what the difference is between low water and high water by biological indicators like this lichen line right here. So on these cypress trees, lichen are very slow growing. Lichens are a really cool relationship between a fungus and a cyanobacteria. The fungus builds the house, the cyanobacteria provides the food, but they're very slow growing and they can't live underwater for more than a couple of days. Lower on the tree, we would see a stain line. It's probably about right here. This is called the wet season water table. So we're about 4 inches lower than where water sits for months at a time. But then during that wet season where water sits for months at a time, we're going to get storms like hurricanes or just bad thunderstorms. It's going to make our water come up and bleed down and come up and bleed down. But what we know is water doesn't go higher than here, because if it did, then those lichens would not be there because they can't survive more than a couple of days underwater.
Very cool.
All right.
Let's see what we got.
So we've got 4 minutes left. And guys, I don't think this has happened on a virtual live field trip before. If you've been with us for a few years, you have seen two-toed amphiumas like what we have right here. One of our giant salamanders, those guys get up to 4 feet long. Some of you may have been lucky to see the other species that we don't catch as often, and that is the greater siren.
Ooh,
And today we caught both.
beautiful.
The greater siren, this is a
my
big,
goodness.
fat one. The greater siren is a little different than the two-toed amphiuma in that.
Oh, wow. Oh yeah, you can see that size difference.
All right, so let's take a look at this,
Put it in
Alicia,
the
from the
light.
side.
Yeah.
So the greater siren, it has a paddle-shaped tail instead of a snake-like tail.
This is the greater siren.
Yep. It has a lot more color on its body. So it's kind of brown and speckled. And then it has these 2 front paws. It doesn't have any rear paws like the amphiuma does, but it has these 2 front feet, and it's got 4 little toes, and those little toes are black, the toenails. And if you're holding them, you can actually feel the little toenails scratch your hand, and it looks like they have black nail polish.
This reminds me though of an axolotl. It has the external gills.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the other difference is, so the amphiuma does not have external gills, but if you guys saw that when it stayed still for just a second, the greater siren right here, he's going crazy, has external gills just like an axolotl, like you see all over social media. Look at him right there. So those external gills are right there. The amphiuma was on top, the siren was on the bottom. And the other thing we have in here is a crayfish. So crayfish are a super important food source. Again, they're down there in that decomposer class. They're eating all that little detritus and dead plant material and recycling that into in the natural system, very important nutrients that these plants need because we don't have many nutrients naturally here in Florida. There's some native fish in here as well. Let's see, what do we have? We've got, is that a mosquito fish in the back? And then this is a sailfin molly. It's a male. You might be able to see that fin sticking up. So let's see if I can spin this around for you. Get you that sailfin molly.
Oh, I do see it. Yep, it's very distinct.
There's the axolotl gills, the external gills on our greater siren.
Wow. Look
And
at
yeah,
that.
further
Look at those
back in there-
nails. I don't know if you guys can see that close up.
Yeah, further back there, you can also see the sailfin molly. So cool. Heather, we got any questions before we say goodbye and release these?
What a great aquarium.
Heather, you still there?
Yeah, we're just going through. No, there's really nothing.
Okay.
There was a question about how they're related, and a lot of them are just really excited to see both of them. They think it's a really cool.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's such a treat to see both of them together. Look at those gills. Oh man. What a beautiful, beautiful animal.
Is
The
he
other
as slimy?
they are just as slimy. They can both estivate. The other cool thing, guys, before we release these, is we still don't know much about these animals. They're super secretive. They sing at night. We think that they lay their eggs up on the wetland upland line, but we're still not sure. And that's really the beautiful part of science is please don't ever get caught thinking that we know everything because we have just scratched the surface. We're running out of time, but we were supposed to talk about fungi and mycorrhizal fungi that connects plants together and how mother plants can actually recognize their offspring from other plants of the same species through these fungal networks. I mean, we are just scratching the surface of the knowledge of nature. And so it's fascinating. We can learn new things every single day. And
Honestly, I think there's so much to learn just getting outdoors and observing and asking questions and doing some research. I mean, because I would never known these are right here in our backyard.
That's right. That's right. So I think what I want to end with, Alicia, is this cue between Miss Gardner and I. Miss Gardner, you started your educational career in health science, right?
Yes, I did.
And I started mine in environmental science. But I think both of us, it doesn't matter what you study, you can still live a wild life. And a wild life is an exciting life. And we live in one of the best places on the globe to live a wild life is here in wild Florida because we have everything from giant salamanders to alligators to amazing sharks and manta rays and everything on the coast to the springs to the keys and coral reefs. And it's all here and it's right in our backyard. So please put down the video games, get outside,
Get outside. Adventure awaits. Explore the outdoors.
live a wild life, and we will see you guys next school year.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. These
Thank
salamanders are
you.
getting rowdy. We'll see you next year.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's put these down.
All right, I know Ann is going to want to get a picture.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Try. I've been not